We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every man should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is February 11th, 2016, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And to the archives on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, Tumblr. I still don't know how to say it because it's the Tumblr without the E. Immediately after the show, or about 5 to 10 minutes after the show, it takes to process. We promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. We have a lot of things to talk about today. They're all pretty much interrelated. I was just watching the master debate between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. I was fucked up because I was sitting here. I have a setup where I have a small studio, but I have a room dedicated as a studio, and I have a desk set up and everything, and I also have a TV in here. So I was sitting here and I fell asleep, like sitting in my chair, but I would wake up and catch parts of it. And I missed about the first 20 minutes because I thought it was either on I thought it was on MSNBC, and then I'm like, well, maybe I have the wrong night. So then I went to CNN, and I really can't stand watching this shit because I know it's all bullshit. It's like watching a bad play because I know everything they're saying is bullshit, but at the same time, I feel like I need to keep up with what's going on, and it gives me a lot to talk about, of course, as well. But I think it's important to know where these fuckers, at least what they're saying they're planning on doing, because I think some of the stuff they will actually do. The other thing is to measure how many people actually agree with them. So somebody like Trump, you hear all the shit that he says, and he's got all these fucking people supporting him. And to me, it's like, what are we in the fucking Twilight Zone? Like, it's Donald Trump. This guy was on, a lot of people don't remember because they're too young, but when I was a little kid, he was on like the tabloid magazines because he was cheating on his wife. What was there? One's I always mix up the names between the daughter and the mother. Like one's Bianca or something. I don't know. Starts with a V. And he was cheating with Marla Maples. So there's so much stuff, and I did a show on Trump about a week ago, and people are so fucking interested because out of all the listens I got that week, I got the most to the Trump show. So people are so interested in Trump, and I went back over his history, and I mean, really, as I said before, I think everything's pretty much rigged in that they already know who I call the powers that be, who they want to be president and who is going to be president. And if they want to, they could pretty much tear Trump apart with all of the things that he's done throughout his life, because he's not somebody who just all of a sudden, you know, some businessman who nobody really knew who the fuck he was. He's not Ben Carson. And Ben Carson's not a businessman neither, but I mean, I've never heard of Ben Carson before this year, or last year was the first time I heard of Ben Carson, who's a neurosurgeon. It's not like he was somebody that has been around. So to have all these people follow Trump with his past, and they'll be able to, so say he gets the nomination, I mean, they'll be able to easily just tear him apart, no problem, because there's so much stuff that he's said over, you know, the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, he's been wanting to be a celebrity forever, and he's pretty much been one. But he's been a weird type of celebrity, because how many celebrity, like, builders do you know? Like, celebrity, I guess he's just a celebrity millionaire. But even with that, there's nobody else that I can think of off the top of my head that's on his level. I mean, you have people like Mark Cuban, I guess, who's a millionaire or a billionaire at one or the other, who everybody knows about. Zuckerberg, I guess, would be another one. But he owns Facebook, which is, you know, you're talking about guys that one owns Facebook, Zuckerberg, the other one, who now I can't forget his name, who owns Cuban owns the Dallas Mavericks. So, I mean, that's a team. But for somebody like Trump, so if he does get that nomination, who knows what they're going to bring out on him. But I do get kind of annoyed watching this. And you feel like you're watching two totally different debates, or two totally different worlds, because when you have the Democrats, which now is just Hillary and Bernie Sanders, who's like, you know, 105 or whatever, and then you have the Republicans, they talk about totally different things. I was just talking about last night how the Republicans focus all on ISIS and about security, and they're trying to scare people and take away more freedom that way. And then you got the Republicans who, they want to take away freedom too, but they want to do it in a different way. They want to do it by taking away more of your money and redistribution and having the government control basically everything. So either way, you're fucked. It's just a matter of figuring out, well, what do the powers that be actually want? What do they want to happen? And based on that, there you go. I mean, there's your next president. Hillary, of course, brought up the female thing. She always gets it in there. She's looking bad, man. I mean, she looks like her face is going to fall off. And I'm not playing. Like, she looks, and she's not that old. I think she's like 64. I mean, she's old, but it's not like she's 80. But she literally looks like her face is gonna fall off. Like, her skin is so hangy on her face. It's just like, fuck, man. I don't know if she's had work done or what, but I know my mother's gonna be 62, so she's around the age of Hillary, and she don't look like her face is gonna fall off. And I'm not saying that because it's my mother. I'm just saying, like, she don't look nothing like that. It's like, what the fuck happened to Hillary that, you know, did Bill just like smack the shit out of her for years and her face is like all hangy? But anyway, our main topic for today, we're going to talk all about the definition of success, as well as poverty, welfare, and all of its effects on society. Also, how it's really the structure of society that I think is pretty much created by the government. And I know that when it comes to me, that people can just say, well, that's what you're going to say because you think everything, it was created by the government and the government's involved in everything. And yeah, I do, but there's obviously a lot of evidence as to why, especially now when they have all this technology that can help them with it. You have a lot of people that would say, well, the government's too stupid to be able to do a lot of this stuff. And granted, they are, but there's a lot of people in the government that aren't. The people behind the scenes. Yeah, the people that we see, like fucking John McCain and Lindsey Graham and I don't know, whatever idiots in Congress. These people that we see, yeah, they may seem stupid, but the people that are really behind the scenes running things are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. And of course, you can read a lot of this stuff in government documents or in United Nations documents. And I had talked about the one that they had talked about, the biggest thing in there that was spelled out. I mean, you could read into a lot of the other stuff, but it was spelled out that, you know, the rich nations would give their money to the poorer nations and share and all of that shit. And it's fucked up. But today, in what I saw of the debates, because again, I'll talk about them probably next week after I'll watch the whole thing on YouTube. But from what I did see when I was kind of in and out of my sleep, they talked a little about getting Bernie Sanders is trying to get the black vote, because they talked about on some other show how most minorities are voting for Hillary, and he's trying to appeal to black people. And you could easily tell because he talked about institutional racism and all of that. And of course, all the shit to separate people. You know, you have these politicians that's basically what they do. They do their best to separate people, and they've done it from the beginning. And unfortunately, it's worked a lot. And they exaggerate a lot of this shit. I mean, I don't think what they say actually represents any form of reality, or at least the majority of reality. It's, you know, their reality, or what they want people to think reality is, but it's not actually the real reality. But anyway, so we're going to talk all about, and this actually will relate to the debates a little and will relate to the election. So that's the positive thing about watching them, is that it does give me ideas for shows, and it gives me different things to bring up during the show to make it more interesting and things like that, because it all sort of relates to each other. Because right now, and what's funny too is you have them talking about all these things. So they're talking about so many different topics. Although again, the Republicans are focusing more on like ISIS and security and stuff like that. And I still don't know what exactly the Democrats are focusing on. It seems like just more income distribution and more control and everything. The government running everything, basically. That the government running healthcare, even though they already do, but Bernie Sanders wants to take it to a whole nother level. Government creating more jobs, government taking more of your money, more infrastructure, more this, more that. So it's essentially them just doing exactly what I've been saying the whole point of government is to control every aspect of your life. There was a comment yesterday, and I forgot who it came from. I think it was Bush, about solving people's problems. You're the fucking president. Whose problems are you're solving people's problems? Yeah, because my friend needs a babysitter on Saturday night. You gonna help them with that? I mean, what the fuck does that mean? Solving people's problems. What kind of problems are you solving? Seriously. It's just, it's ridiculous. What you're doing is taking a bunch of people's money and blowing it. And I'd love to see just a couple weeks without government. I think it would take more than that. Well, I'd love to see just permanently no government, but like, what, if you think about it, it's like, what do they even do? And you could say, well, they do this and they do that, but they do things that they created jobs for themselves. So, like, for example, the DMV. And you could say, oh, what if there was no DMV? Well, what would it matter? You have a DMV because they created a law that said you had to register your car. They created a law that said you had to get a driver's license. They created a law that said you had to get a smog test. I mean, they create laws that cause reasons for other laws or other institutions or other things that are needed because of the laws that they pass. So things like that. And we all have this thing in our minds, and I know maybe some people would deny it, but that it's so complicated that being president, and maybe not for the president, but at least, they have advisors that take care of the complicated stuff or something, but that government and all this whole thing is just so complicated. And it's not. It's really not, because people are just doing their thing, and then they're abiding by I guess depending on who it is, all of these ridiculous regulations and stuff like that, and then they're going and getting those done For example, if you're building a housing community or something, and it's the people that are building the housing community that are taking care of all that stuff. It has not the fucking government. It's the government that makes it harder to get things done, that overcomplicates things, that stands in the way of getting things done. I was talking yesterday about the level of freedom of Nevada and how one of the things that was a positive, now hopefully it won't change or it isn't in the process of changing, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of zoning. It's like most neighborhoods, whether they're residential or not, they'll have bars there. They'll have stores. And it's set up so, not perfectly, but just the way it's set up, it doesn't interfere with, at least to me it doesn't, the traffic or it doesn't interfere with the residential part of it. Now, there might be some people that disagree, but one of the reasons was because it's a relatively new city and a lot of the things were built. You have where I'm at right now, I think was probably built. How old is this house? Maybe late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, it was desert when I probably first moved here. So, and with the roads, where they build the roads like, hey, why don't we build them straight across the city? That would make sense, which of course it does. So, and whether that was I doubt that was a government idea, but maybe it was. But a clock's right twice a day. A broken clock, is right twice a day. So before I get to the main topics for today, I came across one of the most ridiculous stories. It's always when you think you can't find anything more ridiculous, there it is. And I had mentioned yesterday that we need to make sure that we don't forget about all the stuff that the police are doing. And it was never in government media until I think Ferguson was really the first time, but it was still going on. It's been going on forever. It will continue to go on whether they talk about it or not. They didn't talk about it before that. They didn't talk about it a lot after that, but they talked about it a little more. But most of the stories you're going to read in independent media. So a 19-year-old that was killed by a cop, and he was unarmed. He was an unarmed college student. He was uninvolved in the situation, and he was killed by a cop, some fucking piece of shit. And now this is just so fucked up. The cop is suing the family of the kid that he killed because it caused him emotional trauma. So let me say that again. This is in Chicago, which is one of the most fucked up places in the country. If I had to rank places I would not want to be anywhere near, although there's some good artists from Chicago like R. Kelly and Do or Die and some others. Chicago, the group, I don't think they're from Chicago because aren't they English? Anyway, DC, of course, is always going to be number one, because when you have that small an area of all of these government agencies and Congress people and the president and all of that, like, I don't want to be at anywhere near there. But after that, well, Boston, of course, because I grew up there and I want to stay the fuck out of there too. So Boston would probably be number one just for that reason. But then DC, and then probably Chicago. That's how fucked up it is that cops are going to shoot you when you're unarmed. And then after they shoot you, being unarmed, they're going to sue your family because they have emotional damage. There's nothing I can really compare that to. I know you have like the gun manufacturers getting sued, which is totally ridiculous as well. It's like, okay, somebody took a gun and killed somebody with it, and now the gun manufacturer is responsible. So you killed this family's son. Well, it doesn't say, it just says family, but I'm assuming it's parents. You killed their son and they owe you money because now you're all fucking damaged because of what you did. It's fucking insane. Yeah, I was I was looking through stories and I'm like, I couldn't even read the whole story. He's suing for $10 million in damages. I guess his family must have money. That's the only thing I can think of, because suing his family, like, usually how they, most people don't have enough money to even make it worth it. But it says a Chicago police officer who responded to a call for assistance by killing an unarmed 19-year-old college student and a neighbor who was uninvolved in the situation has now filed a lawsuit against the estate of the student he killed, saying the shooting left him traumatized. Officer Robert Rialmo is inexplicitly seeking $10 million in damages from the estate of Quintano Legrier. Apparently, because killing someone is so traumatic, he must sue for what he did. According to the Associated Press, his attorney said it was important in the charged atmosphere to send a message that police are not targets for assault and they'll suffer damage like anyone else. That was the... Oh. What? That's the attorney for him? So... There's also a wrongful death suit against the police, of course. That's just, it's crazy. So we'll have to follow that and see how, nothing would surprise me right now, to be honest. If they actually found in the favor of the police department, I wouldn't be surprised. He shot him 6 times. I guess they called Because, see, they made the same. I don't know why people keep doing this. The parents called the police on the son because I guess he was upset. So they called the police. Now, this is something that my father did, I don't know how many times to me, where he had called the police. Some of the times he actually, like one time he punched me in the head and then he called the police. It made no fucking sense. But there were times when we got in an argument or something like that and he called the police. So, I mean, this was, of course, you know, a lot of years ago. But these days, you do not want to call the police in any time of any type of incident like that. If somebody won't calm down, you're better off, you know, trying to handle the situation the best you can. Or maybe getting a friend or somebody to help, not the police. I guess at the time they said he was combative and carrying a baseball bat. But the lawsuit, the account of the shooting in the lawsuit differs from the family's description. Well, of course, because cops are fucking trained liars. So there's an FBI investigation. They've been asked to investigate the shooting. Sorry, I'm still trying to wake up after watching that debate, going in and out of sleep. Not because it was boring. I'm tired. It's tiring doing the show and working and getting up at 5:45. But it's crazy. And I know what they say. Well, there's more to it than that. And not really. He didn't have a gun. He was unarmed. You shot him 6 times. And then you want to sue him because you shot him. But that's nothing new. You had the guy years ago that police, I don't know if they sued him, but they arrested him because they beat him up and said that they charged him with assault because they hurt their fist on his face from punching him in the face. So I don't know when people are going to wake up to this fucking shit already. It's just like, and this is another murder. So it's always murders that we're hearing about as we should. Well, actually, we're really not hearing about those neither, to be honest. You probably heard about a couple on government media, but there weren't that many. Maybe there were like 4, but you hear about like 4 out of, you know, in the, I don't know how many years before that, how many that have actually been on TV and how many since then. Because you'd hear about stuff like that locally, but I'm talking about on a national level. And it seems like, and I don't follow government media too much, but it seems like, especially with the debates, it gives them a whole opportunity to kind of back off any police shootings and just ignore them again. I mean, nothing's changed. That's the whole point, is that there is no checks and balances here. Like, so the FBI is going to come in and do an investigation. Well, the FBI is part of the federal government. The federal government are the ones who kind of caused a lot of this shit anyway. They at least made it worse. And I mean that because of all the training that they did. They bring in, of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center, who scares the shit out of the police, makes the police think that everybody is a threat because of a father and son that got pulled over and killed a couple cops. Now everybody's a threat. Or in 10 years, it's something like, maybe 5 cops got killed that way. Because you have the different kinds of shootings that happen with police. So you have shootings that you'd expect to happen. You'd have, meaning that somebody goes and robs a store and the police show up and they shoot back at them. And in a lot of those cases, they're not necessarily trying to kill the police or not. They might not give a fuck. I don't know, but they're trying to get away, I think, is what they're trying to do. And I think a lot of the time, some of those people may not want to kill the cop because if they get caught, obviously, they're going to jail for life, as opposed to if they shot and didn't hit anybody, it would be less time. But, and not that they're thinking about that probably in the middle of this going on, but you have those types of shootings. So those are shootings where no one's actually targeting a cop and going out and saying, hey, I want to kill a cop. They're trying to do something else, a robbery or commit some other type of crime, and the cops show up and they're trying to get away. So they're trying to do what they can to get away. So I wouldn't even count those as killings. I mean, I would when you're talking about it being a dangerous job or something like that, which they do count those in that number. But if you're talking about people that actually target police, that say, hey, I'm going to go and just kill police just for the hell of it, like the ones here in Las Vegas, those 2 that I think were like Tennessee or Mississippi or something like that, I have the clip with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and people like that is so low and so unlikely that it's not something, to be honest, that I think they should even be thinking about when they're pulling somebody over. Now, if you can't deal with pulling somebody over without having your gun out or something, then, maybe you should get a different fucking job. But, and of course, this case is a totally different case. This is just where a cop shot an unarmed teen. But I'm just talking about police and their bullshit, that how dangerous their job is and how they're getting killed all the time and all of this bullshit. And it's just not the case. The stats aren't there. But as I was saying, there's no checks and balances. And I've talked about checks and balances before. The FBI investigating something is not a check on the police. Whether they like the police or not, they're still part of a law enforcement agency, and they're going to do their best to defend the police 99% of the time. You're going to have people that I'm sure will do their jobs, I guess. But for the most part, they're going to clear them. So that's just pretty much how it is. And it's unfortunate. I had said that a real check and balance would be if the people had the same weapons that the police have, that would be a check and balance against the government. Because if the people wanted to, they could fight back against the government. Now, I'm not saying that people should do that or anything like that. I'm just saying a hypothetical that a real check and balance would be the people being able to fight back and defend themselves. If it came down to you're looking at, if you look at all these laws that are getting passed that are violating people's rights. And again, what should happen is the police shouldn't enforce those laws, or especially if it was something where you did have a true check and balance and the people were armed and were able to defend themselves, then you'd have that true check and balance. And hopefully what would happen is the police would realize, okay, this is not right, and obviously we're not going to get into an altercation over this stupid law that the legislature passed. I wonder how many people even understand how the government works. And I'm not talking about like textbook fucking ninth grade, we took American government and these are the three branches of government, and it's like how it works in reality. Because they'd realize they don't have any freedom. And I guess part of that is how many people even care how the government actually works in reality. I don't think that many people do. And in a lot of ways, I don't blame them. It's like people have their own lives. They have kids, they have bills, they have all of these things that they have to take care of. So, and that's some of the stuff we'll be talking about tonight, that by, trying to be successful or trying to make it or trying not to make it and just be on welfare, either way, you'd think at least that way you have more time to think about things. But then you're getting everything from the government. So if you're getting everything from the government, you probably like, yeah, the government's great. They give me my house and my money and this and that. And they're great. So I should probably, if I can find it, play the Southern Poverty Law Center. I've played it a whole bunch of times, but it was an actual training session. I don't know which one it is because I have a few of them. But there was one that I wouldn't play the whole thing because it's pretty long, but it talks about actually what had happened with those officers. And at the same time, it was a training video for, that's what was kind of scary, that this video was a training video for officers, and you have them, looking at this, and who knows what they're thinking while they're looking at this. It might be, We'll see if it's this one, but I'll play this anyway. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk all about success and the different definitions, as well as the structure of society relating to success, the effects on society, and your, I guess, your spot in that, whether it's somebody who's considered very successful, whether you're in poverty or whether you're not. And a lot of times, again, it's something like success is very subjective. And I think the government pushes one definition of success, but that's not necessarily the real definition. Or I don't know that you could say there is a real definition because, again, it's subjective. So anyway, we'll be right back after this. If you'd like to call in, you can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. If you'd like to expedite your call, you can just send a text about your name, what you want to talk about, where you're calling from, or you can send a Skype contact request to Nonpartisan Liberty for All with the same information, and hopefully I will be a little more woken up by then. So we'll be right back. NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com.
The John Birch Society, through our Support Your Local Police Committee, has mailed out a packet of material to all the chiefs of police and the sheriffs in the United States. In this packet, we explain to them the necessity for keeping local police departments free from federal control. In it, we have a cover letter from Jim Fitzgerald, who is a former New Jersey policeman who is now on the staff of the John Birch Society. And in this packet, Jim Fitzgerald has produced this DVD entitled...
And this was not the clip I wanted to play, so I'm going to play another clip instead, because the one that I wanted to play that was important actually was the training video that went through the shooting. So we'll actually play something that relates to what we're going to talk about. If my... Windows Media Player comes back, because it's frozen for a second. So I guess while it's frozen, we'll wait for that to come back. And there we go. Perfect timing. All right, we'll be right back after this. Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Okay, I'm 30 years old. I have...
Alright, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm 30 years old. I have 4 kids, and I've been on welfare for 12 years.
Some people are on welfare for a short period of time, while others take advantage and are on it for generation after generation. Do you live in government housing?
Yes, since I was 18, but they put me out because I didn't report my boyfriend living there with me.
Are you employed?
No.
How do you feel about that?
I'm comfortable with it, and I feel like I don't need to look for one because I get a check from the government every month.
How much do you collect in benefits?
I get $780 in food stamps, $500 in TANF, and I get Medicaid and WIC.
That we're put on the earth to serve them. Serve the man, right? But we're living in a society right now where it's the other way around. These women really believe that we're put on the earth to serve them.
Oh, okay.
From Germany, though, just so you know.
That's fine. Love it.
In German or in English?
What's your name? Where are you from?
I don't think that wasn't the question.
So the question is, how do I define a successful life?
It all depends on what you see as a failure.
Success to me is not in terms of material goods or how much money I make.
Oh, I didn't define success by being happy. I thought this was a simple question. One simple question you said. What is happy? Feeling good.
If you measure happiness by financially, we're not happy. But if you measure it by all the things we've done in our life, then we are.
Striving leads to certain types of unhappiness, and striving for wealth or striving for things you don't have or striving for more than what you do have.
Success is wanting what you have.
Being satisfied with what you have and happy each day, one day at a time.
But I think what really makes somebody happy is being content with where their state.
I'm surprised. That was a good answer.
Finding a soulmate, for me, would make me happy. Has nothing to do with financial or money or fame or success.
If you have a loving wife, a family.
I would actually define success with this person and her sister being productive people.
Kids with grandkids, no worries in life, and being more spiritually minded.
I haven't gotten there yet, but when I can see it, I know that it's there. When I get it, I'll know.
I measure success at the end of your life by how the experiences you had and the people you helped.
That feeling that you get when you wake up one morning like everything is in order.
If you feel good about yourself and you're doing right by other people, that's a successful life.
I would say if you have no regrets at the end of it, there's nothing left you haven't done.
If I felt like I did better than I did yesterday.
That's when I'll know that I've reached my goals and accomplished my mission in life, you know.
When you get to the end of your life, if you can look back and be proud of yourself for what you've done and happy with the way you lived it, then I think you're successful.
That's it. That's it. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. Cool.
Our teachers would say, like, Elijah, why do you dress that way? You're so bright. You're not a thug or you're not a tough guy, as if that's all my culture represents. It represents a gangster lifestyle, a thug lifestyle. So they always made me feel like I was missing something, as if I wasn't complete, as if I was like, my culture was inferior. If you make these kids feel like they should change the way they dress or change the way they talk or change the way they look or change the music that they listen to, then it builds an inferior complex inside them where they now try to be something else and feel insecure about who they really are and try to hide that from mainstream society. It creates this hierarchy of culture instead of us all being on the same level. I believe that there's two different paths that people take. Some people completely give up their culture, dress and talk differently, so they start to view success as making it out the neighborhood. Their whole view of success is to get away from it. When I would go to school, it would be teachers and principals and other people and mentors telling me that, yeah, you're gonna be successful one day, you're gonna be big one day, you're gonna leave the community, and that's not what I wanted. And so the only job that I saw that people had in the community was drug dealing, which was destroying the community. So I feel like these two paths both are wrong, because one gives up everything to be accepted by society, and the other gives up nothing and doesn't make it in societies. I kind of look at my neighborhood as just a place that just needs a little bit of help. It's kind of like seeds that haven't been watered. You get what I'm saying? Because no one spent the time and energy and funds to fix the neighborhood. We should teach these kids that neighborhoods has problems, it has wounds, but all it needs is a doctor. They could be that doctor. To teach these kids to appreciate their neighborhood the teacher must also appreciate their neighborhood. The teacher must also be involved in their neighborhood, interacting with the families, interacting with their neighbors. If a child is getting baptized, go to his baptism. You have to appreciate the neighborhood and appreciate the people in the neighborhood, affirm them in their culture so they can view themselves in a positive light and not feel insecure around people that are from an upper class. My view of success is going to college, striving, but I don't want to just be a light that shines bright. I want to be able to reach out and have other people shine with me. You know, we all in this together. Going back into the neighborhood and being able to change the reality of other people. To educators, I think their position is really important because they like the lighter, they the initiator. Like, I don't think it's their position to like save the community, like to save the neighborhood, but I think they are going to educate the people that are going to save the community. I'm not saying tell all these kids to be teachers or tell all these kids, you know what I mean, to go on a nonprofit work, but tell them to help one another in whatever they do, help the community in whatever they do, help someone in whatever they do, because you need to create not only that type of community, but that type of world where everybody helps one another, where everybody depends on everybody. Because I feel like if we just unify these communities, then we can turn this whole thing around. So that's what I'm doing.
Promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
And we are back. So when it comes to success, what is your definition of success? So is it something that, I know if we were looking at what would the majority of people say, well, I'm sure the majority of people would say money, that their definition of being successful would be having a good job where they get paid a lot of money, probably having a college degree, maybe not. I guess if you're making, if you're Bill Gates, he didn't graduate from college. If you're a millionaire, if you're making millions, and I guess it wouldn't matter if you graduated from high school. But there's plenty of people that are quote unquote successful to some, but they may have terrible relationships at home or with their kids or with their family. So success, that's where it's very subjective to me as what success is. And you had some of those people saying that to them it was being happy. And I think that's definitely what success is to me. Now, again, that's to me because that's subjective. But if you're a millionaire and you're not happy, then what's the fucking point? Money, there's that saying, money can't buy you love. Money can buy you a lot of things, though, that can help. But to me, really, money is only a means to an end of a way to feel secure. It's really security to me. And it's also control. So it's like if I had $10 million, I wouldn't worry about having to have a job or corporations or governments or things like that controlling me in that sense. So what I mean is, like, if you work at a corporation and you need your job and you can't just quit because if you do, you're going to be homeless, then they have a whole amount of control over you. And the same with the government. If you don't have enough money to bail yourself out when you protest or something like that, or to stand up to the government because you can't afford a good lawyer. That's assuming that you're going to follow the system. You can't really do a lot. I mean, you can do it anyway and just say, fuck it. But it gives you that security. And to me, that's really what money means to me. It's not about, I mean, it's cool to have nice clothes and to be able to buy stuff, but I don't buy a lot of shit. I buy nice clothes, but nothing like, I get things on sale. My fiance used to work at a place that owns a couple other clothing stores like Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein, and now her mom still works there, so we get 40% off there. So, you can go to places like Ross and Marshalls and find those same type of clothes. So I guess I like certain brands of clothes, but I don't have to pay a ridiculous amount of money for them. I can go somewhere and get them a lot cheaper. So for the most part, there's some things that I like that I guess are somewhat expensive, but for the most part, when I'm thinking about money, I'm thinking about saving it just in case there's an emergency, or saving it for a future to have, if anything happens, especially with the government and the way things are going. If they want to, I had to pay for a lawyer before, and lawyers are pretty expensive, and mine was for a minor misdemeanor. And I think that ended up being like $6,000 to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. So all of that stuff is expensive. But the thing that comes into it that I think is everybody's own worst enemy, I really do, is ego. Because people want to be able to, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about money, but they want to be able to brag about, I did this or I did that, and to be able to talk about those things. And that's just all about ego. And I think that's the thing that gets people in trouble the most. I was talking about, I don't know if I was talking about this on air or I was talking to somebody about it off air, but I listened to some of his stuff today too. But I saw this movie about Wayne Dyer. My brother had said, watch this Wayne Dyer movie a couple years ago, and he kept asking me, so I'm like, all right, I'll watch it, fine. He's one of them self-help guys. He actually died pretty recently, September of 2015. So, about 6 months ago or so. And he was one of those self-help guys, and he would do speaking engagements and stuff like that. So you can see them on YouTube. I didn't agree with everything he said, but he was pretty good, and he was a good speaker, and he'd throw in some jokes, and he was pretty good. But in the movie that he was in, and I don't remember, this is really the only thing I remember from the movie, because it was like a real movie. It wasn't about his speaking engagements, but it was, but it wasn't. I think he might have even played himself, and he went on vacation, and they'd have scenes where, he talked to people about the type of stuff he talks to people about. But it was a movie. You know, of course, not a very good one. It was like a, you know, not that it was bad, but I mean, it wasn't like, you know, an A-list movie or something like that. But, you know, it was fine. I enjoyed watching it. But the main thing that I remember was that they were at this, you know, supposedly luxury type hotel. And the owner of the hotel walked around in like maintenance clothes, like one of those one-piece kind of things, and did all the maintenance and stuff, or did some of it, and he would plant flowers and, you know, do stuff like that. And he didn't say anything about being the owner, but then finally in one scene, something comes up where he says to Wayne Dyer that he's the owner of the hotel. So the whole point was that, yes, he's obviously successful, but he doesn't care. He doesn't have to prove to everybody like, oh, look at me, I own, you know, a hotel. And I think about that sometimes in, say, my job, and just where I'm at, I guess, career-wise, and then, you know, kind of, I don't say anything about it to anybody or anything like that, and I don't brag about, well, I'm here and you're here or something, or I don't really mention anything career-wise. And I'm talking about my full-time job, not this, because obviously I would say I'm not that successful, but it depends on, you know, again, it's subjective. So I could say I'm successful in what I'm trying to do, but I guess we'll talk about that later. But that sometimes, you know, that ego creeps in there where it's like, I want to be, you know, these people don't think that I'm important and they don't give a fuck. And I'm not saying the people outside of work. I'm just talking about people in higher positions that don't value my work or something, or that they, you know, if I left, they wouldn't care or whatever, you know, or I think about, you know, I should be, not with the specific company I'm with, but just in general, that in my life where I should be so much higher than I am, but because of, you know, certain things or whatever, I'm not, and I've been kind of screwed over at some jobs and things like that. And then, you know, I think about it, and it's like, what does it matter really, as far as, you know, the money matters, but the money only matters, like I said, because of more the security associated with it. And that is important. You know, I don't have to have the nicest car in the world. I mean, you know, I have a okay car. My car's is getting old. It's like, what, I brought it brand new. Maybe it's like 8 years old now, but it's fine. You know, it's a nice car. But it's not like, you know, a Benz or something like that. Like, I don't need that type of shit. I don't need to show off, like, look at me, I'm, you know, rich or something, 'cause I'm not. But even if I was, I don't need that type of stuff. So it's like, what does it even matter if somebody is higher than me at my job and I think, I should be higher than them, or I have more experience, or whatever. What does it even matter? And that's kind of where I think that with most people, that no matter what, that ego comes in there. And it's hard to say, is that just a natural thing, or is that something that people have been brought up that way? That whether it's intentional or unintentional, that people have seen other people or their parents or government media or whatever, politicians. I mean, you look at politicians, damn, especially with Trump. You look at Trump, I mean, he's the biggest fucking egomaniac I think that's ever run for office. I mean, you look at the ego on him. And even about winning, he had said, it's just about winning, and I gotta win. And he talking about him in third person, like, me, Trump, gonna win South Carolina. We're gonna win this. We're gonna win that. And what that really means, because when you think about what you don't have, or what you think you should have, or where you think you should be at career-wise, does that do anything for you? Does that make you happy? Does that? Obviously not. So, you, like I said, you could have somebody who has all this money and has a great career, but their home life sucks. That they're married and they don't get along with their wife, and their wife hates them, and their kids hate them. But if what's most important to them is money and career, then I guess they would be successful, because if they don't care about the family and the wife and the kids part, if it's more important for them to have the career, then I guess they would be successful in that sense. But if they want the whole thing, or the family is more important, then obviously they're not too successful. So what I think, though, is that you have a definition of what, it's a general definition, but you have a general definition of what success is in society. So society says that, having a good job, making pretty good money, having, a wife and kids. Well, I guess for a man, for a woman, I guess a husband and kids, or maybe, I don't know what it would be for a woman now, because would it be more having a career, or would it be more having a husband with money? I guess it would depend on the woman, but in society in general, I think it would be one or the other, either being married to somebody who's successful, or being successful yourself. See, and women have, I guess, that option. Well, not always. I guess it depends on, and this is going to sound bad, but I guess to an extent it depends on what they look like. Because if you're a very attractive woman, then you have so many more options, And this can kind of go back to this whole fucking privilege thing, which is a bunch of bullshit as far as I'm concerned for the most part. There's some things, like I said, in general, I think it's harder for your average black person to be successful than your average white person. But that's just a general statement. But for women, you know, it's, oh, women are oppressed and all of this shit. And it's funny how a lot of this stuff is rather recent. So what's been going on for the past, 10, 15 years that women have been so oppressed they couldn't even say anything about it? Because that's not the case, and we know that. So if you take a woman that's beautiful and smart, I mean, that's probably, you want to talk about privilege, that would be the most, and also that had, their family as well, and had a good relationship with their family. That would be probably the most privileged, I guess, person, because the options that they would have would be a lot. They'd have the option of having a career, and that's something that Hillary keeps bringing up too, of course, is, equality with women. And all of this shit with all of a sudden that no one's equal anymore, white men are evil and everybody else is not equal. And it's like what they're trying to do is use that to exploit a political agenda of take all of these groups and get them together to get the government involved and to get the government to take more control. And that's really what it's about. Not to say that certain people aren't oppressed, and not to say that there isn't racism, because there is, or there isn't discrimination against women ever, but that's really what they're trying to do. And then, of course, politicians like Hillary exploit that shit. But if you take a beautiful woman, not only do they have, the option of, hey, they could meet a rich, successful man and just stay home and raise kids. They could have a career if they wanted. They could have both if they wanted, and have, a nanny or something, or have, maybe be in a position where the parents of either their husband or their parents, or some kind of situation like that. So they would have all of these options as far as based on what they view success as. And society keeps changing, and I think it really is dictated by the government, because it benefits the government. Because if you think of something like this, like, look at the times when women mostly stayed home and raised kids. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with women having careers. And I don't think that women should have to stay home and raise the kids. But there are still plenty of women that want to do that. Not every woman. Some women don't want to have kids at all. Some women just want to have careers. Some want to have both. Some maybe want the husband to stay home and watch the kids. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that neither. I think it's all based on what you want. If the woman has a career where they make more money and they're more successful, then I think it makes sense. Of course, if they get divorced, then the man should get alimony. But yeah, I mean, if the woman wants to have a career, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that the fact that now you have, in the majority of families, both parents working just to get by, that is a benefit to the government. And you would say, well, how is that a benefit to the government? Well, that's a benefit to the government because obviously you're not going to homeschool your kids in those situations for the most part. I had talked about, if you really want to, there's ways around it, especially now with the internet, and there's ways to find like-minded people and stuff like that. But what I mean is, now if you have two parents that both work and they spend less time with their kids, the government spends more time with their kids. And that's who brings your kids up. You may have a job where you work, 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or something like that. Well, look at all that time that essentially, so say your kid takes the bus to school, or maybe if you're lucky, you get to drive them and at least see them in the morning. But say you don't have time, so they take the bus. Then after school, they go to some daycare. And then by the time you get home and see them, and maybe you get to have dinner with them, maybe they've already ate because it's too late already, and then they go to bed. And it's like you have the school system and the daycare system, which is regulated by the government, raising your kids. Now, when you had a society where one of the parents could work and one could stay home, now granted, at that time, it was mostly the woman staying home and the man working. And don't forget about, people want to do this and say this is discriminatory and this is anti-feminist or this is anti-woman or whatever. But there are biological things that factor into it. There are women that have a bond from having a baby inside them for 9 months, and that they have a different kind of bond than the father has. I don't know the specifics of all that, but women have said that. And there's obviously a biological thing there. It's just, it's what it is. I mean, women carry children. I know that we're in this politically correct time where you can't even almost say things like that, but there are a lot of women that do want to stay home and take care of their kids. And it seems like if you do, you're almost shamed for wanting to do that. I remember during the campaign with Obama and Romney, and not like this fucking means anything because it's all government media anyway, but the Romney's wife, she spent her whole career, I guess, her career was being a homemaker. And definitely in that case, when you're talking about somebody like Mitt Romney, who's, a multimillionaire, and I'm sure they had dinner parties and she'd have to show up to certain things because he was a politician, and that it wasn't just taking care of the kids. Now, on the other side, I'm sure they were able to afford a maid and stuff like that too. So it probably wasn't as hard as the normal woman that doesn't have any help. But, and I think she had like 8 kids or something. But what is wrong with that if what success is to you is to have kids and raise a family that is successful based on your definition, like to bring up kids that are good kids and well-mannered or whatever it might be, what is wrong with that? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that because of I guess it would be the third wave feminism, that it's like that's not okay anymore. Or, I personally think that women should be able to do whatever they want. And whatever success is to them is just as important as whatever success is to a man. So if success is to them, even if it's fighting in the army, and I'm not just saying that. Now, they talked about like a draft, and I don't think there should be a draft for women. I think that's unfair. I don't think there should be a draft for anybody. So I guess it's not just about women, it's about having a draft for anybody. And somebody did bring up, it might have been Ben Carson and other people that brought this up, that they want to have a law that after you graduate from high school for a certain amount of time, you serve in some kind of armed forces. And I'm sure they would do that with both women and men. Now, hopefully that will never happen, because I think that's another form of indoctrination. And it's like, don't we have enough indoctrination as there is, or as it is? But I think that anything a woman wants to do, that's up to them. That there shouldn't be any obstacles or unnecessary obstacles, because there's always going to be, obstacles in getting to do what you want to do. But there shouldn't be any obstacles based on being a woman, like, oh, you can't do this because you're a woman or whatnot. They had talked about in the Republican debate about as long as the woman met, the standards that the man did. So say they have to do a certain amount of push-ups or a certain amount of sit-ups or whatever. As long as the woman met those same standards, then there's no, they didn't have an issue with it. And you look at it, and I don't find it, something I want to watch or anything, but I don't have any problem with them doing it. Like, you have women MMA fighters, you have women boxers, you have women, well, I don't know if they actually did wrestle. I know they were involved in wrestling, but you do have women boxers and you do have women MMA fighters. And they're pretty tough girls. So, there's nothing wrong with that neither. So I kind of gotten a little off subject here, but it still goes to what is success to you. it also, like I said, has to do with society and what's acceptable, quote unquote acceptable or expected in society. And at the same time, I think that's really something that the government, in some ways, not every little thing, but is behind. Because again, you know, they want to own your kids as much as possible. So getting both parents to work is a benefit to the government. It's not something that hurts them. It's a benefit to them. The same way that getting women on welfare and getting men out of the house is also a benefit to them. So that's something that went on as well. And, you know, looking at welfare, just to be clear, there's more, this is not a race thing because there are more white women on welfare than black women. I know that's because of the population, that there's a higher population, but there's still plenty of white, not just women, white people, you know, families and whatnot on welfare and on food stamps and on all these things. And, you know, how much of that is because they really need it, or how much of that is just taking advantage of the system. Now, there was an interview that I played, and there was a couple of the same one, and I don't think I got all of that one. Let me see if I try to fast forward past this, that I can get to the rest of it. But it was a girl that was 30, and she's been on welfare since she was like 18, and she has 5 kids, and she really didn't give a fuck about it. So here's her at the beginning, and then I want to see if I can find the rest of it on this tape here. Not tape, but clip. If it ever comes on. I think it starts out like with...
All right, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm 30 years old, I have 4 kids, and I've been on welfare for 12 years.
Some people are on welfare for a short period of time, while others take advantage and are on it for...
So she was on it 12 years. She was 30, which means she's been on it since she was 18, and she had 4 kids. And then I'm going to try to go a little further because I know they go back to her.
A woman would have an attitude. Marry, you have sinned not. Marry means you have sex. That's the purpose of vision, man. To be a good carpenter, you have to have vision.
So then it goes to some guy just blabbering about,
you have to actually see the house in your mind and then physically
shit
build it.
that is irrelevant.
All that hell, right? All
But
that
I
hell that
thought it
Jacob
went
knew
back.
Rachel.
I thought it went back to the girl at some point.
Means Jacob and Rachel had sex,
and
right?
she was
So
a pretty girl as well.
No, I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah, still got a rule. Yes.
Just the point that if something terrible did happen.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't the one that I was thinking of that I had downloaded. That there was that same girl where it went on further, and they had asked, well, you know, what do you think about it? And she was like, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a job. I haven't had a job like ever, I think. And, you know, the government gives me money. They give me $780 in food stamps and like $500 in cash or something. And I think she gets the house paid for. And then they asked, did she ever sell her EBT cards? Because that's something that's been going on. And I know somebody that was doing that was actually buying EBT cards from people so they could get the cash and do the drugs. So the person I knew was actually buying the cards so they could get more food. They weren't selling the cards so they could get more drugs. But recently somebody brought that up too, that said something about, oh, I know people that, I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with that. I'm not gonna fucking buy EBT cards so I can get more food so somebody can get some cash or whatever. And I know it's restricted, that there's certain things that you can't buy anyway. So it's sad. And like I said, I mean, she was a pretty girl as well. To see somebody 30 years old now, has 4 kids, been on welfare since 18. And obviously, I don't know. I mean, she could sit there and say that that's success for her, because she could say, look, I got a place to live. I got, money coming in from the government, and I don't even have to do anything for it. Now, I would just say that's having low expectations. But when I used to think about success and things like that, like my father, not the way he grew up, but as an adult, I would ask him, he was in the same job, like, don't you want to advance in your life and move up and have a career and make more money and things like that? And I think, of course, if someone was just going to give him a raise and give him more money, but he's like, I just want to be able to get by. And I couldn't really comprehend that, the whole wanting to get by. And even now, even though I don't necessarily want all of these material things, and I'm not about getting all these material things, I don't want to just be able to get by, because that's where, as I was saying before, money is also control, in that the people that are running the world, really, and I think I was talking about this last night, to think of things more globally than just the U.S., but the people that are running the world, and the billionaires and millionaires and the powers that be, and the people that are CEOs of the big corporations, and all of these people have, all of this money, and they're able to do what they do because of the money. And then it gets to a point, I think, where it's not even money anymore. It's just power. And that's why I think that a lot of fucked up things go on, because I think you get people that get bored with having so much money and being able to basically do whatever you want, that then you might get to a point where these people are playing games. But they're playing games with people's lives. They're playing games with countries. They're playing games with wars. And that's what I think of some of these people that are the people behind the politicians, that they are really doing things like that just for their own amusement and entertainment, which, when you think about it, is really fucked up. And it's a small percentage of, the population, a very small percentage, but it's just, it's fucked up. And is that success? Because to me, that's more of a sickness. How much money can you possibly need or want? You know, as long as you have enough where, hey, I don't have to worry about anything. I'm set for life. I'm good, you know. But to just keep, I guess, chasing money. However, I guess if everyone that became a billionaire went out of business, I mean, that wouldn't be a good thing neither. I guess they would pass the business to somebody else, but that person would be a billionaire too. So you'd have a lot of companies that would be needed go out of business, but you know, they could always just give their money to their employees if they wanted. And that, of course, would be a better world. But the whole thing is, you have to choose to do that. You have these politicians that they want to force people to pay more money. That they want to say, hey, you got to pay people more because they don't have a living wage. So what about that part of it? So we talked a little about welfare, but what about the living wage part of it? And how if you work 40 hours a week, which is another one of those arbitrary fucking numbers that they came up with, like, you know, being 18 to be an adult and 21 to drink, and that's just another arbitrary fucking thing. But what about that? So I'm going to take a quick break. If you'd like to call in, you can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or you can Skype in at Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Just send a contact request and your name and where you're calling from, what you want to talk about. And when we come back, we will talk a little about the whole living wage thing. We'll also get more into success and the other parts of success that don't involve money and being happy within your life. And I don't know that there are a lot of people that are. So we will be right back. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And if you want to check out any of the at least recent archives, you can check us out on YouTube/user/nonpartisan, or just search Nonpartisan Liberty for All on YouTube. So far, I've earned 23 cents. So, you know, in 50 years, I'll be getting a check for $100. So keep those YouTube views coming in. All right, we'll be right back after this.
Just the point that if something terrible did happen, isn't that the time when everybody seems to come together?
Yeah,
and if
9/11.
And if that terrible thing was permanent and it wasn't something we could just push to the back of our memory and say, hey, I don't want to get in the isolation tank and deal with the fact that, yes, we did sponsor a jihad against the Russians. And when someone was blowing things up, there's some mom in Russia right now who cried over her dead son back in the 70s and 80s, and her pain is no different than any American mother that's, you know, suffering because their son died in Iraq. At some point, if we don't put ourselves in that isolation tank and say, you know, we can't escape this. This is something permanent that has affected our
well, the
world,
real problem is the word
then
we.
we have to come together.
Yeah, the problem is the word we. You know, it's like, who's actually doing this? Who's actually doing it? It's a very small amount of people that are actually in charge of the heinous acts of the world. It's really kind of fucked up. Small amount of people put forth the motion of a large group of people that work for the cause. But it's a very small amount of cunts. It's kind of incredible when you really stop and look at how fucked up the world is to a small amount of people. Isolated cunts. Yeah. Yeah, like guys like Dick Cheney. Remember when he was in that bunker all the time?
Deciding what Bush would do.
What the fuck was that about? Dude would just hide in the bunker, and we would just go up. We hear Dick. How do I know he's in the bunker? I mean, that seems really stupid. I'm not even trying to find this out, and I know that he's in the bunker. You know what I mean? What the fuck kind of weird shit is that? Are you so confident in that goddamn bunker?
Listen, people like him are in the position that they're in because they convince other individuals that they're moral leaders.
Hey, an alien. Yes, I've travelled across space to check on the progress of your species. Cool. Shall I take you to our leader? Your what? Our leader, the guy in charge. The guy in charge of what? Well, in charge of everything. You have one guy in charge of everything? No, he's in charge of government. What is government? Well, government makes the rules for us. It tells us what we can do and what we can't do. So is government really smart? They come up with wise rules for you to follow? Well, mostly. But some of its rules are really stupid. Do you disregard those rules? No, we have to follow the rules, even if they are stupid or we disagree with them. Government punishes anyone who disobeys the rules. So you are slaves to government? No, it's not like that at all. Government works for us, the people. It serves us. We're the boss. It tells you what to do, and it punishes you with violence if you disobey it, and yet you're its boss? Yeah. But there are some things government does that you don't like. Well, yeah, not everything government does is popular, like spending on wars, for example. What is a war? It's when government basically spends the people's money on weapons and soldiers and then sends them over to the other side of the world to kill a bunch of people over there and destroy their country. I don't like it that government does this. Well, I can see why you might not like that. Have you humans reached the stage where you generally consider stealing, enslaving, and killing each other to be bad things? Oh yeah, we know that. Don't steal, don't attack, don't assault. But you give money to government and they use it to kill people. Well, yeah. But government does good things with tax money as well. Why don't you stop paying for the things you don't like and only pay for the good things it does? No, we can't do that. You can't just decide to stop paying taxes because the rules say that everyone has to pay taxes. But the rules come from government, though, don't they? Yeah. So government made a rule which says that everyone has to pay them money. So everyone pays taxes because if they didn't, government would punish them using violence? Well, yes, but most people don't mind paying taxes. Most people feel obligated to pay taxes and obey government laws because it's for the good of society. Society needs government, and that means we all have to pay taxes. So just to make sure I've got this straight, government makes the rules and you feel obligated to follow the rules, even the ones you don't like, and it tells you what to do and threatens to punish you if you don't do what it says, and it uses some of the money that it's taken from you using threats of violence to pay for things you don't like and actually think are immoral, like mass murder. Yeah, but we can ask it to please tell us to do smart things, and please don't take our money and use it to kill people. We're allowed to ask them to tell us to do what we want them to tell us to do. Are you guys just scared of this thing? Is government some huge monster that can just squish you at any moment if you disobey? No, government isn't a monster. Well, what is it then? Could you draw me a picture of it? Government isn't really the sort of thing you can draw a picture of. Maybe you could take me to it. Where is government? You mean the building? Government is a building. No, but the politicians who make up the government have buildings they work from. So government is a group of these politicians? Yeah. Okay, so what species are these politicians? Well, they're human. Like you? Yeah. So politicians are humans and they're government. You're a human, but you're not government. No. So it's the politicians, they're the ones that boss the rest of you around and make you do things you don't want to do and take your money using threats of violence. But even though you're all humans, you're not allowed to boss them around and take their money? No, they'd put us in a cage if we did that. But look, it's not like the politicians can just do whatever they want. Like, a politician can't just come up to me on the street and make me give him money. They can't do that. Politicians can only do things like that in their job, when they're working for government. Oh, so politicians aren't government, they just work for government? Yeah. Okay, so government isn't a monster, and it isn't a building, and it's not politicians, it's something else. And it employs politicians, who are just regular humans, who get to order everyone else around and take their money. How does a regular human become a politician? Well, that's the great thing about our government. It's a democracy, and that means that the people actually have the power, because we get to decide who among us get to be the politicians. We get to vote. And if a politician starts doing things we don't like, we can just replace him with someone else at the next election. So the people that get chosen to be politicians only get to boss people around and take their money for a short time, and then they go back to being regular humans? Exactly. That sounds like a powerful position to be in. But if you get to choose who does that, I assume that politicians are always the wisest, most honest, caring and respected people among you. Well, no, not really. I wouldn't say politicians are known for being honest, or wise, or caring. And they're certainly not the most respected people among us. Come to think of it, most politicians are lying, power-hungry crooks. The ones you chose? Yeah, they're always doing things we don't like. They use taxpayers' money to enrich themselves and their friends, and they never keep their promises to voters. They've been caught stealing and lying and taking bribes, and they mostly do what the big corporations want. Yeah, they're always doing stuff like that. They're completely corrupt. They're a bunch of lying crooks. But you said that most humans know that stealing and beating each other up and killing are wrong. And you said that you have the power because you can change who's in charge. So why don't you just replace the lying, thieving, murderous, crooked politicians with some regular people? Well, we don't try to elect lying crooks. It just always turns out that way. But we have to have a government because some humans are nasty and might kill or enslave or steal. Civilization just couldn't survive without government. Let me get this straight. Because you're worried about the small number of nasty people that are willing to kill, enslave and steal, you think it's necessary for your survival to have a system where some humans among you, for a short while, get to call themselves the government, and they get to order everyone else around like slaves and, if they want, commit mass murder overseas, using money they stole using threats of violence. Politicians get to kill, enslave and steal because if they didn't, someone else might. And you try to elect good, honest people to be politicians, but what happens every time is that the people you elect turn out to be corrupt, evil, lying crooks. That's your system. Yeah, that's pretty much government.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in. Username Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and we are back. It is 8:55 Pacific time, so we still have an hour left. If you'd like to call in, you can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or you can Skype into the show. Just send a contact request to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. It's all one word. Before we went to break, I started going into the living wage, which does kind of relate to what we were talking about regarding success and welfare. And it definitely relates to Mr. Bernie Sanders and what he was saying. He seems to be pretty much saying a lot of the same stuff. And as I had mentioned earlier, although today he was focusing on trying to get the black vote. And how can you this is fucked up in itself too. How can you refer to a whole race as like the Hispanic vote or the black vote, or like everyone in that whole race thinks the same way, or say the black community, unless you're talking about a specific community, like an area somewhere where everyone in that area or the majority is black or is Hispanic. That's just fucked up. I've always thought that. So it's like I mentioned in Las Vegas, the majority of places are mixed. Like there's a lot of Hispanic people and some black people and white people, and the majority of areas, at least that I lived in, have all been mixed, and that I see are, wherever I go, except maybe for Summerlin, but I stay out of there anyway because they're a bunch of snobs. Except the movie theater there is really nice. They have one of these movie theaters. They opened up, and I mentioned this last night, how Summerlin is unincorporated Clark County, and most of Las Vegas is considered unincorporated Clark County, but it's still, we consider it part of Las Vegas, and it technically is. But anyway, they opened, it's like a mall and a whole plaza, and they have a movie theater there. And they opened a movie theater where they have the chairs that are like the recliners. They have waitresses. They even have a bar. So I usually go to that theater now. It's more expensive. I think it's like $14, but still, it's definitely worth it. So that's the only time I go to Summerlin. But to say that, like, the way they talk about votes and we need Bernie Sanders needs to get the black vote, or the needs to campaign in the quote unquote black community because he's way behind Hillary. It's just fucked up. And I think that in a way is racist. I don't know, racist, but it's just it's fucked up, because it says to people, what if you live in a mixed place? Like, are you actually part of this other fucking community over here where the majority of that community is, say, 80% Hispanic? So like my fiance is Mexican, or Mexican American. She's like third generation. So is she part of the Hispanic community and part of the Hispanic vote? I don't know. It's just fucked up. But what Bernie Sanders mostly has been talking about, of course, is redistribution, of money, living wages, all that stuff. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of fell asleep when I was trying to watch it. Fell asleep sitting up at my desk. Luckily, I woke up before the show began. But one of the things I started talking about before the break was this living wage thing, which has been going on for I don't know how long. And I understand that companies like Walmart exploited it. Now they're actually closing down something like 1,000 Walmart stores. When Ken Shorjan was on a couple weeks ago, he had mentioned that they were closing down a whole bunch of Walmart stores. I don't remember how many, but I recall it being in the thousands. But I know what they were doing was essentially people were working there, getting paid a certain amount from Walmart, but it wasn't enough to support them. So at the same time, they were actually collecting welfare as well, which is fucked up. That's one thing that I'm totally against. Based on the circumstances of society right now, I can understand, but the way things should work is that people that really, for whatever reason, cannot work, you'd have charities just like you have now, and that's what would help to take care of people that for whatever reason couldn't work. Because there are people that can't work, but there's not to the extent that they get Social Security. So, I mean, they're handing out Social Security and welfare and food stamps like it's nothing. And there's plenty of people that could work, but I'm too depressed to work or something like that. At the same time, of course, even though at the State of the Union, the president said, if you don't think the economy's good, then what word did he use? He used a specific phrase like "you're crazy" or something like that, or "you're mentally deranged." I don't know, something stupid. But obviously, the economy isn't going too well. There's like about 4 or 5 articles in Drudge today. Gold's going up, unfortunately. I never went and bought more gold after I sold the gold that I had. And the economy is starting to, it's not starting to crash yet, but there are signs that we might be getting to that point, which is fucked up because the State of the Union was like 3 weeks ago, and maybe less than that. So I don't know. But then it's hard because you have that happen all the time where, the economy is about to crash, and somehow they're able to save it. Because when you look at it, if you're printing that much money, I mean, it's just common sense. With all the money that they print and all of the things that the government does, you can only do that for so long. I mean, they're 19 trillion, I think, in debt. And most people don't even understand the difference between the deficit and the debt. The deficit being for the year, how much they owe for that year, and the debt being the actual how much they owe in total, which would be the cumulative amount of all the years that they borrowed money. And it just keeps going up because they're not able to balance a budget for 1 year. So I know that gold had went up, but there was a whole bunch of articles there. I didn't really get a chance because it was right before the show to look into a lot of the detail. I did read the one about gold going up, but it's still a lot lower than it was, because at one point gold was up to 2,000, and I think at the same time, maybe 3 years ago, it was like 1,500. So when I had bought mine, it was around the price it is now, and it was a little less because it was over like 3 or 4 months that I had bought some gold. But anyway, going back to this living wage and essentially taking money from one group of people to give it to another. I paid over 20 grand in taxes this year, which reminds me I need to check my bank and see if I got my fucking deposit yet. But I paid over 20 grand in taxes. That's not just the federal tax. In Nevada, we don't have a state tax, but it's counting Medicare, FICA, all that stuff. It ended up being around 20,000, and that's like the most I paid in taxes, because I think this year is like the most amount of money I made, ever. And none of it, unfortunately, was from the show, but that's just, to me, it's ridiculous. What am I paying for? And 20,000, that could be somebody's fucking salary. I mean, seriously, for a year. So, I know it doesn't work that way. It just all goes into a pool that all the tax money that is taken. And even with Social Security, they don't save it. They don't say, oh, well, here's all the money you paid into Social Security. We're going to put it in an account for you. It's like, no, we're just going to take it and fucking spend it on whatever. And, maybe it will be there by the time you retire. Probably not. And I think they should end it anyway. Of course, again, I don't think there should be any government, but whether there is or not, if there actually is still a government, I think they should phase out Social Security, because it's ridiculous to take people's money where they could save their own money and get a bigger return on it anyway. So it makes no sense. But anyway, regarding the living wage, this whole idea that just because, well, I'm willing to work 40 hours, so pay me enough money to to live? How do you even calculate that anyway? So is it to live by yourself? Is it to live with a roommate? And that's something too. There are more and more people now, because of and I think it's more inflation, because everything's so fucking expensive, that have roommates. But is it to have a roommate? Is it to support a family? Because I've heard that come up too, that they think that working at McDonald's, that you should make enough money to support your whole fucking family. And it's like, how can you have a job at McDonald's, which basically is for high school kids, really? I mean, that was the whole purpose. And maybe kids like right out of high school that take a couple years off or something like that. And to work at McDonald's and expect a living wage. And if the economy is so fucking good, because I've never heard that before ever until, since it's come up in the past couple years. I never heard the term living wage, first of all. And I never heard anything about people getting paid enough from a job at McDonald's or Walmart or anything like that, getting paid enough to have a living wage. And again, I don't know, and maybe it's because of my privilege. No, everything I got, I earned my fucking self. So I just can't see how, if somebody's willing to work that hard and they're not just, working 40 hours a week, but they're coming in, they're working hard, they're trying to move up, that they wouldn't, and that they wouldn't be able to get another job, and that they wouldn't be able to get a raise. Because I think that's what part of the issue is. A lot of it, of course, is the economy. I'm not going to say that that's not a factor. You have the Fed spending money or printing money like it's nothing. So that affects things, inflation, all of these things. But and there not being enough jobs, despite what fucking Obama says. But at the same time, I just based on my own experience, I can't see somebody working hard and putting in all this extra work and not being able for it to lead to something else, whether they get promoted to a supervisor and get more money, or a manager, or they're able to take that experience and move someplace else, because that's what it's supposed to be, is like a first job. Now, I know Walmart's a little different, and that's a whole nother issue, because they were almost to the point where it seems like it was fraudulent to an extent, where like they have a deal with the government where it's okay, we're going to pay you this amount, and then you'll still be able to get welfare or whatever, food stamps, and with the combination of what the government's going to give you and what we're going to give you, you'll be able to make enough money. And that's kind of fucked up. But still, I would think that you would just be able to get some other job someplace else. And people forget about the work that you have to put in if you want to be, if your definition of success is making money and advancing in a company and having a career. And again, I don't know that that's what people's definition of success is. When it might have been the last time Ken was on, but one of the times he was on, he was talking about kids, I believe, in Japan, how pretty much I don't know if this is their definition of success, but what they want to do is just hang out and play video games, and that's about it, and just have fun, and that they don't even care about sex or whatever. I don't know where that information came from, that like they survey, like, would you rather play video games or have sex? I don't know how they came up with that, but supposedly that in Japan, they're worried about the next generation because they don't seem to give a fuck about anything. Just having fun and playing video games and that whole thing, that they don't care about any type of at least career. But to me, it seems like that's something that was always pushed by society. And I think anything pushed by society, of course, starts at the government level. And of course, they wanted dedicated workers, people that wanted careers, people that wanted to not necessarily advance, because you need people to be in the same jobs, but to have the wife and the kids and the job, and that's what they wanted. And at least in the U.S. And now it's not that people don't necessarily want that. It's that you can't afford that. I mean, how can people afford to even have kids now? If you can't afford, and they're having them anyway, it seems like the people that have the money to have kids aren't having them, and like Idiocracy. Exactly like Idiocracy, where you have the people that are more successful and more intelligent that aren't having kids, and then the people that are just, having 5 kids and 5 baby daddies, whatever, and then getting on government assistance, that are the ones that are having the majority of kids. And that is not a positive thing. And that's where I don't get this whole fucking thing with people like Alex Jones. When he would talk about this, he would really fucking piss me off, because he would talk about the fact that, Margaret Singer, and they want to, I think I'm sounding more like Beetlejuice, but that, and I know that that's a fact, that she started Planned Parenthood and that part of it was population control, and I understand that. However, as far as I know, nobody went around and was kidnapping girls off the streets and forcing them to get abortions. I've never heard any allegations of that. I've never even heard him say that, okay? So you can't have it both ways, though. Which do you want, where it benefits the government if you have the, 16-year-old kids having kids and having, I want to make sure I don't say any people's names here because I don't want to offend anybody, but a friend's relative had 1 miscarriage, has 2 kids, and I think now they're 19, had 1 kid, I think at 17, or 1 at 16 and 1 at 18. And then her mother had 1 at 14 and 1 at 16. And it's like a cycle. And if you think about it, if you have, and I'm trying not to judge people because I know things happen, but I mean, that's where I would say, if you can't take care of a kid, and I think you'd see this happen, if they know that they're not going to get any of this money, do you think they're going to have the kid or have an abortion? Because I would think they'd have an abortion that if they knew that they're not going to get any more money to take care of these kids. But I don't know. But there's also morning after pills. There's people I talk to that don't even, and I don't want to get graphic, but that don't even pull out. Like it's that bad. Like they don't care. So would they continue the same behavior if they knew that they weren't going to get any money? And again, I'm trying not to judge people because, again, I believe in, you have the right to do whatever you want. If you want to go and have fucking 10 kids, fine. The problem I have is that then if you're looking for the government, which is really money that was extorted, like the fucking 20 grand they extorted from me to pay for your kids, then that's the problem. If you want to have 10 kids and you can pay for them, then fine. But people are talking about having a living wage because they have a bunch of kids. And why did you have all these kids if you couldn't afford them in the first place? So that's obviously a problem. If you're having kids and you can't afford them, why have them? And I know it's not easy to have an abortion, but why not, morning after pill? I mean, that's really not the best way. The ideal way, of course, is get on the pill and use a fucking condom, just for, to be double safe. But if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, the next day you can go and get a morning after pill. I think they're like $40 or $50, but there may be Planned Parenthoods or places like that where you can get them for free, and I'm sure there are. But no, so if you wait, see, this is one of the stupidest excuses I've actually ever heard when it comes to, I think, abortion, is that they didn't have the money to get the abortion, but they had the money to have the kid. So you didn't have the money to pay, whatever. It's not that much money. It's less than $500. So say it's, $300-400. So you couldn't pay, and I'm sure that there's ways to get a discount. It kind of sounds like that was like, I got an abortion coupon in the mail today, but I'm sure there's ways to get discounts or whatever. And I'm not talking about, pushing yourself down the stairs. I'm talking about actual discounts. But if you're in a situation where, it's going to be hard for you to get the money to pay for it, but $400 compared to all the money you're going to have to pay over at least 18 years. I forget what the number was to raise a kid, but fuck, the hospital delivery itself is way more than that. And I know there's people that don't want to have an abortion, but it's, again, if you can't afford to have a kid, then don't have one. And I don't blame people. I know that people say, well, then you shouldn't have been having sex then. And you probably shouldn't have, but it's not always that easy when it comes to things like that, because things happen, and I'm sure especially guys can understand that, where things happen, whatever. But that, I think, is a lot of the people that are saying they want a living wage. I don't think it's just single people. I think it's people that have families that are sitting there, hey, I got all these kids, I need a living wage. And then again, it's, well, wouldn't you think of that before you had the kid in the first place? Like, how am I going to fucking pay for this kid? But I think it's been ingrained in people that the government will take care of them. And it's because it's a kid. It's just like everything else. It's like, oh, we got to protect the kids. Like all the laws that are passed because they're kids, or, well, that they use. I mean, there's usually an agenda behind it, but all the laws that they'll use when it comes to kids and things like that, where they'll say, oh yeah, we got to protect the kids. We got to protect the kids. And it's because they're like, well, it's a kid. It's not the kid's fault that the mother was irresponsible. And fine, it's not, but still, I think that they realize a lot of the people that are having kids will, at that young, will realize that, well, you know, the government will just take care of it anyway. And if they have more kids, they'll get more money. And that I don't get. That bothers me even more when they have one kid. Okay, fine. But then they have another one. Like, they have a kid at 16 and then they get pregnant again. And it's like, didn't you learn from the first time? And again, I mean, you know, whatever. I don't have any kids, but I could have had kids. You know, there were some accidents there or whatever. So I understand that. But, you know, expecting the society at large to take care of your kids and the fucking stupid government going along with it. I think there's more. I mean, since Obama's been in office, it's the amount of food stamps or something or public assistance has gone. I don't know the specific numbers, but I think it's the highest it's ever been. So, yeah. And then you have people asking for living wages. So I would assume that on any level that would not be something that somebody would look at as success. Now, if you had a bunch of kids, then ended up turning your life around and going to school and getting a really good job and then being able to take care of all your kids, then that's something that I think people would look at that as a success story. But at the same time, it seems like people that fuck up and then turn themselves around get more credit than people that just do it right the first time. It's like, okay, well, you fucked up, and then now you want credit because after you fucked this all up, then you turned it around. So, well, we're going to take a break. Number is 702-470-7664. Again, that's 702-470-7664. I'm sure I offended a whole bunch of people during that, but just being honest when it comes to girls that are just having more and more kids. If you'd like to Skype in, you can Skype in at Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Send a contact request, your name, where you're calling from, and what you'd like to talk about. So we'll be right back after this. Well, actually, I wanted to play Government Explained Part 2, and I didn't pull that. So let me pull that real quick. I actually have it right here. So there we go. So we'll be right back after this.
Leaders. Who is the current leader of your species, and where are they leading you?
Well, we don't have just one leader for the whole planet. The world is divided into
leading
countries,
everyone to hell.
Each country has a leader of its own and a government of its own.
You don't have one government that rules the whole planet?
No, this planet is really big, and there are billions of people on it. The world is divided up because people in different places want different kinds of leaders and governments.
How many countries are there?
A couple of hundred, I think.
So there are millions of people per country?
Yes, or hundreds of millions in some of them.
And all the people in a country live under one single government?
There can be layers of government, but there's only one government in each country. That's how it works.
But you can have multiple governments on the same planet?
Yes, and it's better that way. If you had a single government for the whole planet and it turned tyrannical, there'd be nowhere to escape to and no one to oppose it. And I wouldn't want to be ruled by a bunch of people living thousands of miles away on the other side of the planet. It's better having government more local, because then it's more accountable.
How far is it from here to where the rulers of this country live?
The capital of this country is hundreds of miles from here.
So you don't want to be ruled by a bunch of people living thousands of miles away, but you don't mind being ruled by a bunch of people living hundreds of miles away.
That's just how it is, I guess.
Why don't you and your neighbours set up your own country here, so you can keep a close eye on what the individuals acting as your government are doing?
I don't think our government would allow us to do that.
So you have these countries, some big and some small, and the individuals living in each country separately choose which people are going to be their politicians and act as government of that country.
Yes, although not everyone is lucky enough to live in a country where we get to choose our leaders. A lot of countries have kings or dictators or warlords running their government. People in undemocratic countries don't get to choose their leaders.
So you consider yourself lucky because you live under a democratic government, where you, along with millions of other people, get to vote, and whoever gets the highest number of votes becomes leader of the government, the gang that tells you what to do and robs you.
Yes, but there's more to it than that. Democracy isn't the only thing that's great about the government of this country. In fact, democracy itself is not an ideal system at all, everyone knows that. With a pure democracy, the majority rules, because the politicians do whatever the majority of people want them to do, and this can be a problem for minorities. We know this. The real reason why we're lucky in this country is that our government is not a pure democracy, but a republic. With a republic, minority rights are protected against the tyranny of the majority.
How?
Our rights are listed in our constitution, the document that established our government. It lays out how government is supposed to work. It says what government is allowed to do and what it isn't allowed to do.
What does it say government is allowed to do?
Government is allowed to collect taxes for things like national defence.
Hold on. The Constitution says that government is allowed to collect taxes. So it says that the individuals who are acting as government are allowed to rob everyone else using threats of violence.
Yeah, but only to do good things.
Where did the Constitution come from?
It was written by the founders of this country, the people who first set up the government.
The first politicians of the country?
Yes.
So a bunch of regular people just got together and wrote on a piece of paper that they're allowed to rob everyone else, as long as they call themselves government and call their robbery taxation. Then, because they have this special piece of paper, everyone just sits back and lets these guys rob them?
You're missing the point. The founders wrote the Constitution to restrain government. They made sure there was a separation of powers, so there were checks and balances in the system. They did this to strictly limit the power, size and scope of government. They made a list of things the government can do and must do, and everything else the government can't do. They even wrote about specific things that the government can't do, like violating the inalienable rights of the people to life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, but I don't see why the piece of paper is so important. I mean, hypothetically, what if the majority of the people want government to do something that the Constitution says government shouldn't do? Couldn't the people vote in politicians who promise to do it for
Wherever
them,
we look,
regardless
we
of
see
what the
turmoil in the
Constitution
financial
says?
markets.
How does
It's
having your
starting to
rights
look
listed
horribly
on an old
like it
document
did in
help
2000.
protect your rights today?
Well, if the politicians who get voted in want to pass unconstitutional legislation, then the third branch of government, the judicial, will step in and not let the legislation pass. The founders recognised the problem of democracy, so they gave us a Supreme Court, and their role is to check whether legislation is constitutional or not.
But the Supreme Court is itself part of the government.
Yes, politicians get voted into positions in the executive and legislative branches, but the judicial branch is made up of judges. So if a majority supports the government violating the rights of a minority, the judges of the Supreme Court simply won't let it happen.
Are these Supreme Court judges just regular humans?
Yes.
So how does a regular human become a Supreme Court judge?
They are appointed.
By who?
The politicians.
But then what is to stop the democratically elected politicians just appointing judges who will allow their popular but unconstitutional legislation to pass?
Well, they just aren't allowed to do that.
By who?
By the Constitution.
The piece of paper?
Yes, I admit it's not a perfect system. I suppose what you're saying could happen.
Does the government of this country, which you consider yourself lucky to live under, ever do things its own constitution explicitly forbids?
Yeah, a lot of things, actually. The government is a lot bigger now than it was when the Constitution was written. The politicians pay lip service to the Constitution, but they trample over our rights anyway.
What about the Supreme Court?
I guess that system hasn't worked very well lately. Government does pass unconstitutional laws all the time. The separation of powers worked for a while, though. It's not a bad system.
Powers were separate? I thought you said that the powers were all in branches of the same government.
Well, yes. The branches of government are totally independent and separate from each other, except that they're all part of the same organisation and all funded by taxation.
So when you said the system had checks and balances in it, you meant that the government would check itself and balance itself?
That was the idea.
So let me get this straight. A long time ago, a small bunch of regular humans had a meeting and created a document called a constitution that said that they can rob everyone else, millions of people, using threats of violence to make everyone obey their rules and commands. But so that the masses of the people would let them get away with this robbery and slavery, that small bunch also promised in the same document that there were some things the government would never do, and they described a way to structure government so as to restrain it. But over time, the promises have proven to be worthless, the restraints have proven to be useless, and government has grown significantly in size, power and scope, violating more and more of the rights of the people. It sounds to me that if the Constitution was written to constrain government, then it's been a complete failure.
Well, the real problem is that people just don't believe in the Constitution anymore. The Constitution only works when people know what it says and why it's important. If people just knew that, then they wouldn't vote for politicians who violate it. An informed populace, that's the only way to really restrain government.
Wait, you said you feel lucky because this country is a republic, not a democracy, and a republic has these supposed checks and balances that prevent government from violating people's rights, even when a majority wants to violate the rights of others. But now you're telling me a republic can only work if people refrain from electing politicians who will violate the rights of others in the first place. That's the same as a democracy. We're back to where we started.
I see your point.
Is there anywhere on the planet where government is, despite the imaginative labels, anything other than a gang of thieves and bullies?
But there'd be chaos without government.
I'm sure that's what they tell you.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. As Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, I think their debate is over by now. But while they're talking about how they're going to get all this money to give people all this shit and pay for everything, you have a bunch of articles on Drudge. I was only able to look at one of them, but I knew they were doing negative interest rates for banks, which means basically they're getting money from like the Fed. But there's a bunch of headlines that the crash could destroy capitalism as we know it. Recession fears 2016 or recession fears 2016. Recession. Gold lines around the block. I did read that article about gold, that people are buying up gold now because of what is going on. Investors seek safety. Questions grow over banks. And I don't know if this would be an actual bail-in where they would actually, the banks would just take your savings as opposed to get the money from the government to bail out the banks. So I don't know all the details of what's going on. I'll have to find out from Ken, who will be on next week, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to talk about as far as what's going on. But this is something that he's been talking about now for a while. It's not something that's coming out of nowhere. Most people, to most people, it probably is to just your average person, because they listen to Obama in his State of the Union speech and say how the unemployment rate's down and things are going so much better and all of this shit, when during that time you had the Fed, printing all this money, and I think they still are, and they had interest rates were at 0. Then they raised them, I think, 1/4 point. But now they're going to have negative interest rates, which means, from what I understand, that the bank would actually get money from borrowing money. So they'd get, it's crazy. They'd borrow money. They'd pay them to borrow money. So then I started to look at one article that started to talk about, I know in one country, and Ken had talked about this, that they want to do almost like a stimulus where they send people money to go out and spend it, because they're looking at deflation, because nobody's buying anything. And you got the gas prices going down. So we will definitely be talking about that next week, no doubt. But, of course, you're probably not going to hear a lot about it in the mainstream media. And Bernie Sanders isn't going to say anything about that, because, we'll just tax the big corporations. And, of course, the big corporations will be leaving if you're going to tax them all this money. But I guess back to our topic for tonight. But I would take, if you have any savings in the bank, I would take it the fuck out. And I would buy as much gold and silver as possible, because that's really what is probably going to, go up. But even if it doesn't go up, it's at least not going to lose its value, because really they've been rigging the prices of gold and silver for a long time by selling gold futures when they don't even have the actual gold. So it's like me saying to you, okay, I'm going to sell you this gold future that we're going to deliver in 6 months, but you never get the delivery because you just end up getting the cash, or you just continue it for another 6 months. So I never actually have to deliver the gold, but I don't have the gold anyway. So that's what we've been talking about when Ken Shorgen of the Daily Economist, dailyeconomist.com, has been on. He's on every other Wednesday, and he'll be joining us this Wednesday. So, again, we'll definitely be talking about what's going on with that. But regarding back to what we were talking about regarding success, I kind of got off on a whole nother thing talking about women having babies that they can't afford, but really that's what it comes down to. Now, as someone who believes in true freedom and liberty, I don't believe in stopping anybody from having babies or doing anything about it. I do, however, don't believe in giving people money for it neither. Because if we didn't have a government, if we didn't have taxes, which there shouldn't be, there would be, of course, charity. And I think charity would go way up, because if people didn't pay taxes, even if I didn't pay taxes, I'd honestly feel bad. I mean, sometimes if I know somebody that is, on hard times or whatever, I'll help them out a little. I mean, not like a lot. Like I'm not giving out like thousands of dollars or anything because I don't have that kind of money to give out to people. You know, if I had a house and I was in a better financial situation, not that I'm in a bad financial situation because I'm not, but I mean, if I had, you know, all that shit, but I mean, I'll give whatever, you know, give somebody $50 or something like that, or, you know, help them out if they're in a bad situation, like a friend or something. But as far as I won't donate to any charities, the only charities I've given money to is ones that have to do with guns, the Gun Owners of America and the NRA. And if I didn't have to pay taxes, though, I would probably find a charity. I would do research. I did give money to the ACLU, but I stopped. And you know what? They do not fucking stop contacting you. I haven't, I had my membership for a year. It was a $50 membership, and that was it. Because once I found out their stance on guns, and then how basically there are all these things going on and they're focusing on things that I think are important to an extent, but it was just everything was like gay marriage. And not that I don't support gay marriage, but there were a lot of more important things going on, because if you don't have any freedom, who gives a fuck about, you know, marriage in general? So they still don't stop. I think I got, you know, an email from them a couple days ago. So they still do some good things, but not enough for me to give them any money. But I think you'd have plenty of people. I mean, you do now. You have plenty of people that donate money to charity. So I don't think it would be an instant thing. I think it would take a while, just like freedom. I mean, I think you have people that aren't ready to be totally free. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean I would stop. And, you know, if tomorrow we could say the government's gone and everybody has total freedom, that I would want to stop that, because I wouldn't. But in an ideal situation, it would be, I guess, better to have a specific place as opposed to, you know, just total freedom everywhere, and then be able to go to that place and live in a free society. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's what I believe in. And I think the only way to get there, as I said, is non-compliance. But I think you do have some people that, if you got rid of all the government handouts, that would react in a negative way. So I think short term, you would have some bad things that would happen. But I think long term, it wouldn't be perfect. I don't think anything's going to be perfect, but it would be the best case scenario, I think. It would be the best thing for people that love freedom, is to have an organized society without government, where the only things that are essentially illegal, or you don't even use the word illegal, I mean, the only thing you really go by is natural law, where you don't hurt anybody and you don't hurt anybody's them or their property. But I guess kind of getting back to this, I mean, my main point of this whole thing was just how you have a kind of definition of success and how you're supposed to live and how, have a family and the white picket fence and, you go to work every day and have barbecues on the weekends with your neighbors or whatever that whole, I guess, definition of success and of how you're supposed to live your life according to the societal norms or what the majority of people view success and view how you live your life. And I think that just like a lot of other things, that yes, it all stems from the government because that keeps everybody calm. It keeps them in a state of, well, they have their kids to worry about, they have their job to worry about, they have their spouse to worry about, and it keeps them in that state of perpetual, not brainwashing, but just going through that perpetual cycle of doing all those things, and it doesn't really allow them to challenge anything within the system. So I think between you have that side of it, and then I think on the other side you have the welfare side where to keep people in poverty in line, that there's another approach that started with Johnson's war on poverty, because everything's a fucking war, and it actually made things worse because it made people or women not want to have men, or, well, I wouldn't say not want to have men around, but maybe not get married or have a family. And I'm not saying all women, and I'm just saying in general that was their plan or their goal. Now, that doesn't mean it worked with everybody, but it definitely, if you look at the statistics now of unwed mothers, it's, and unwed mothers, I think under like age 21, it's insane, the amount, and compared to, I think, like, 50 years ago or something. And that'd be something interesting to look at, is the, going through maybe 1950 all the way until now, looking at age ranges and the amount of babies born out of wedlock. And I mean, there's already statistics about kids that are born without a father, that don't have a father around, and how right away they're already starting behind everybody else because the statistics on them, going to jail or graduating high school or those types of statistics are a lot worse than people that do have fathers around. So you have that as well on the other side. Of course, there are a lot of people that are able to get past that are able to have hard beginnings or a hard life to start out with and find some success. And again, that success could be just, finding a job that they like and being happy and meeting somebody that they fall in love with, and that's their success. This whole thing of success being a billionaire or being somebody like Donald Trump, if that's success, then I'd rather not be successful. And when I look at myself, I mean, I think I'm somewhat successful and I'm somewhat not successful. I'm not going to get into the details as to where I think I have some success and where I think I don't, because that's more personal to me. But I think that you do, and this is where I relate this to the freedom and liberty aspect, that you do have that same influence there, just like you do with everything else, just like you do with government schools and government media. You have the government that's trying to influence your definition of success and what you do to achieve it, especially with getting married. I mean, I think the pressure now, I think that's changed a little. It's not like it used to be, but like there's a pressure for women by a certain age to get married and have kids. And depending on where you're from, I remember when I told my father, at the time I didn't have a girlfriend and I was 27, and he said, well, I guess I'm not going to have any grandkids. I'm like, I'm 27. I'm not, 57. So, and maybe it was just, where I was from or how he grew up, or, he had me when he was like 22 or something. So I think that all stems from government. And what I'm really, I guess, saying is that I know a lot of people would say that I'm giving government too much credit. I'm saying that they control way more than they actually control. And I don't mean that they control it like directly, like there's a person right there labeled government with a hat on that says government that's directing everything. That's not what I mean. But collectively, I think that there is a strategy, there is a game plan, there is things that they want to accomplish, and they have ways that they use to accomplish it. Just like spying on people is part of it, and arming the police like they're arming them. There's obviously, with all the things they're doing, there's an end game to all these things. There's no doubt. They're not just doing them for fun. And they're not doing them for terrorists. And I think most people with common sense know that. So, what is the whole end game here? And again, I think it's to control every aspect of your life, just like governments do, and to have a 1984 type scenario, and that you're, I think already people are slaves to the government, but you'd be more of a slave to the government than you are now. And that's why I come out and say the things I do. And when I talk about things like this, where I tie that back to where I think it's really coming from. And the majority of things, that's where it's coming from ultimately. Now, again, it's not like somebody who's sitting there in a director's chair with a government hat on. But, yeah, it kind of trickles down. And it's the influence of all of those things. So that's about all the time we have for tonight. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We will be back on Tuesday, so be sure to tune in then. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. There you can find all the different applications that were on, the archives, where to find all the archives. Also, I have a number of editorials, recent ones that are posted there as well, if you would like to read those. There's also some other stuff on the website as well, so be sure to check that out. And if you'd like to donate, you could also donate at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com/donations. And that is it. And hopefully you will join us on Tuesday. And if not, definitely join us for Wednesday to when we talk about what's going on with the financial system, because that is very important. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.